Welcome to News Talk Television. I'm Dara Wells. Also with us is information specialist Melinda Murphy. Are advertisements degrading to women? A recent survey by the ad agency Saatchi & Saatchi found that despite some progress, women are still very unhappy with the way they're depicted in ads. This survey was particularly critical of ads which portray women as sex objects and ads that don't reflect a woman's body image realistically. According to a Gallup poll commissioned by Colgate-Palmolive, 85% of women found ads which feature glamorous models using Colgate's products unappealing and irritating. However, critics argue that advertisers never intentionally offend women. They say that pretty women and sexy ads mean big bucks, and manufacturers can rely on this method of selling to generate profits and publicity. Joining us from our studio in Washington, D.C. is Dr. Martha Burke, a political psychologist and publisher of Washington Feminist FaxNet. Martha says that advertisers need to become more aware of how they offend women. Also with us is Dr. Audrey Gusky. She is a marketing consultant for General Motors and Westinghouse. And Audrey says that advertisers are very sensitive to the changing roles of women. Martha, let me start with you. Why do you feel that some ads degrade women?
Well, I think when you see a beer ad with a buxom blonde jumping into the water and the caption is, get into the gold, what does that mean?
Yeah, I can only imagine. Okay, I can understand how that might be degrading, but isn't it that sex sells? Isn't it human nature to want to see a pretty woman associated with a product?
Depends on what kind of human you are. If you're a female human, I'm not sure that sex sells in that sense. I think that women are tired of seeing themselves as sex objects on everything from chain link fencing to magazine ads touting men's sports magazines.
What about the chain link fencing? I don't think I'm familiar with that commercial. You want to describe it?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's a print ad. It's been running in the Rochester, New York newspapers, and it's basically a crotch shot of a woman in a very short skirt shown from knees to waist, and the caption says, like what you see, barriers only where you want them.
Oh, so
and what's that got to do with chain link fencing?
Yeah, it's like a chastity belt kind of idea?
Yeah, it's a chastity belt looking thing.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, though, Martha, I mean, ads are big business, and it just seems to me that the industry that spends billions of dollars isn't going to deliberately put ads out there that offend half the population.
Well, I think probably you're right, but in some cases, if the half the population they're appealing to is the male half, and they think that this kind of sex sells, then probably it doesn't make very much difference to them whether or not they offend women. But I think there's also a big ignorance factor. I think that advertisers for many years were male-dominated field, not so much anymore, but the folks working inside advertising looked at the world through their own eyes. It was a male vision, and they just didn't see it.
Okay, now we've got somebody here in our New York studio, Martha, who advises the ad industry, happens to be a woman. What about it, Audrey? Has the industry gotten smarter? Is Madison Avenue more savvy and more sensitive now to women?
Absolutely. I think Martha's argument could have perhaps been valid 10 or 15 years ago, but nowadays marketers are very savvy to the different dimensions and the multiplicity of women. They're well aware that women are really the #1 consumers out there. We're buying most of the goods, and they're not going to do anything to offend us.
Well, then how do you explain the beer ad that Martha takes offense to?
Well, what's interesting, when you look at statistically how that beer ad did, beer sales did not go up. So these ads are really not effective. What they found is sex tends to get people's attention, particularly men, but they forget what the product is. And so they're not effective in increasing sales. And so marketers are well aware of that. And I think over time we're going to see less and less of this type of advertising.
You know what really interested me is that not long ago there was an ad for Diet Coke, and it was a bunch of women in an office looking out a window at a construction worker who was like a gorgeous guy, mopping himself off. He's really sweaty and hot, and they're taking their Diet Coke break, they're drinking their soda, and they're ogling this guy. Now that is a role reversal. Did that one do well?
Yeah, that started in the early 90s, and you can almost look at that as the new bimbo. Men now sort of evolving into different roles.
The himbo, if you will.
Exactly, and what we've seen is more and more men portrayed in different roles. Advertisers have problems with women. We're very complex. There's a lot of different facets to our personalities and to our lives as homemakers, as professionals. And they try to, in a sense, show this juggling and balancing of all these different roles that we're portraying. It's role conflict, it's role overload for women. But men have those same issues as well, so we can argue all day how women are portrayed, but nowadays men are portrayed interestingly. You have the nurturing man, you have the sensitive man, and as we said, you have the sex symbol man too. So it's not just women that are portrayed in a lot of angles. There are 30,000 ads out there we see every single year, and there are obviously a small number that are going to be offensive to a group of people.
But those are the ones you tend to remember, Audrey. That's the problem.
A bit. But if they're offensive to you, chances are you're not the target audience that they were going after. The Calvin Klein ads were very controversial, but they were going after the younger audience that they appealed to.
Martha, you were going to say what?
Yeah, well, I got a couple of things to say about that. Maybe we'll work a little bit backwards here, and that is the Calvin Klein ads.
All right.
They're showing women, very young women, kids really, that are almost emaciated. They're so thin.
And we're seeing a couple of examples, like Kate Moss is up there on the screen.
Yeah, and I mean, we have girls now, according to USA Today last week, 40% of 9 and 10-year-old girls in this country are on a diet, and 1 in 5 college girls have an eating disorder. So that is an insult to the culture. It's an insult to normal kids, normal young college women, and I don't disagree that many companies are starting to have a little sensitivity to women as consumers, but not near enough. And I surely don't think it's accurate to say that we're making very rapid progress at all.
Well, what about, hang on, Martha, what about the ad, though, that I mentioned with the so-called himbo, this really sexy guy who's a construction worker, and you got the women staring at him instead of the other way around? Isn't that sort of like equal time?
I did not view that ad as progress at all.
Really?
What I viewed that ad as showing is, see, girls, sexual harassment is okay. This kind of ogling on the street is no big deal. You can do it too. But we all know in real life who gets stalked on the street most, you know, who gets sexually harassed as they walk down the street. It's not guys, it's women. And I thought that ad just served to legitimize something that this culture should not be looking at as acceptable behavior from either gender.
I think we give too much power to advertising a lot of times because, in a sense, advertising is a reflection of society, and it's showing the problems that society's having.
Well, but here's a big question. Who holds up the mirror? Is it Madison Avenue, or is it the public saying, this is what we want to see?
It seems that Madison Avenue is a lot of times following the trends of society.
I don't think the parents of 9 and 10-year-old girls would agree with you in any way on that. The 9 and 10-year-old girls that are on a diet trying to look like Kate Moss.
Well, what about that? You know, anorexia is a very serious problem as an eating disorder among young women.
Absolutely. As a parent of a 10-year-old daughter, I can relate to that because I see some of the trends that my daughter and her friends are going through. But it's not necessarily that these advertising models are role models. They're just simply figureheads there. They're just visible to show the product. And as we all know, attractive people tend to draw better attention.
But what's attractive?
Where do the girls, though, your daughter and her friends, where do they get their ideas about what is ideal in looks in this society? A lot of it comes from advertising.
Some of it comes from advertising, but obviously they have peer pressure. They have pressure within the schools, pressure from their parents. And so it's not really just advertising. If you look at TV shows, I mean, in a sense, they're more offensive than a lot of the commercials that we have. So
you mean like the Beverly Hills 90210, where everybody is thin and perfect looking, and how can any young person aspire to be that, you know, short of plastic surgery?
That's exactly correct.
You know what, let's get into our audience here. Stand up. You got a question or a comment? No. How about, anyone got a question or a comment? No, they're shy. All right, listen, we'll go to them in a second. But what we're talking about here today is the ads that we see. And it's mostly women, I think, who take offense. Let me tell you the one that I find like the most offensive, Audrey, and I hope it's not one of your clients. Let me see if I can do this impression. Okay, we're on an airplane, and here is a woman going in to wash her hair. Oh, my. Oh, I mean, it's like that scene in Harry and Sally, and when Harry met Sally, and the woman says, I'll have what she's having. It is so sexual, it really offends me.
Well, as I had said before, what happens if those ads are offensive to you, chances are it was not directed toward you or your particular target audience.
Well, who on earth would color her hair or wash her hair other than a young woman with, you know, I mean, I think that's exactly who they were aiming at, no?
That's the audience that they were aiming at, but you know, when you think about all the different ads, it draws people's attention, but when you really look at the sales, is that actually going to sell? my prediction is that that's not going to be one of the more successful products.
I would hope you're right. I would hope you're right. Martha, we're going to let you in here in just a second, but we do need to take this break, and when we return, we're going to hear why one woman says that she does take issue with all these young women in commercials and print ads. We're going to find out why in just a moment. Stay tuned to News Talk Television. Just like that in a bikini. Really, I do. This is News Talk Television. I'm Dara Wells, and here's the question we're asking. Are advertisements degrading to women? You know, a recent study by the firm of Saatchi & Saatchi found that ads do not portray the lives of women accurately, and too often they reflect women as sex objects. But critics argue that Madison Avenue doesn't intentionally offend women, and really sexy advertising is good for the bottom line, so to speak. Joining us is Ann Block. She's an interior designer and she's an actress. She says she takes issue with all the younger women in commercials and print ads. How come?
Because they neutralize older women. They make us invisible. It's almost as if you're only viable, you're only sexy, you're only valued up until about the age of 30 and hardly then. Only perhaps even sometimes 25, and thereafter you might as well just close shop and forget about life. That you're not a viable human being anymore.
Well, what are some examples of, for example, a man who's maybe a little bit older, maybe not real sexy, but is a spokesman for a product that doesn't have anything to do with getting older and maybe getting out of shape? Can you think of anybody? I mean, is there like a... You can? Martha, who?
I can.
Who?
I believe it's John Madden advertising for a hardware chain.
Okay.
Now, try to put yourself, viewers, in that same place and have a woman of that same age, physical condition, and general demeanor as John Madden, and ask yourself, would she be on television as a spokesperson?
Okay, so your point is that June Allison is up there, but she is hawking Depends, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And she's not hawking a so-called mainstream consumer product.
It is something designed for older people, and therefore you feel that there is a true double standard. Audrey, you disagree?
I disagree with that, because
Why?
as we're seeing baby boomers aging, advertisers are well aware of that, and they need to show women of different demographic backgrounds, age, income levels, race.
I don't see it. I don't see it at all. Where is it shown? When Calvin Klein and Guess ads are showing young girls, there was a Guess ad I saw just recently in the New York Times Magazine section, I think it was in, and it looked like a little girl, a little 12-year-old girl with lots of makeup on.
Yeah.
Is that reaching
I think
me?
we've been singling out some particularly controversial ads, such as the Calvin Klein, the perfume ads.
This is big time. This is big time people.
When you think of the average commercial out there, you've got a tremendous variety
What is the
of
average commercial?
You've got consumer products being advertised, supermarket product items. You've got cars being advertised.
I see makeup ads, and all the women out here will agree with me. You see makeup ads with young 20 and 25-year-olds talking to me about how to remove the lines in my face.
All right.
She hasn't got a line.
Let me ask this audience. Do you agree? You do. You're a mom. Do you have children?
I have two grown daughters.
How old are they?
29 and 32.
Uh-huh.
And they're already looking for lines.
Yeah. That was are they finding any?
No, I don't see anything on their face, but my daughter, who is 30, my older daughter, who's 32, said to me at the age of 30, she said, I just called my friend Melanie, and we both discovered a line on our faces. Why should she be looking for that at all at the age of 30 when you're absolutely gorgeous and at your prime? And just one more thing. When I was 30, and I was still married and my children were small, I saw an ad talking about face creams. I think it was Estee Lauder. And she said, why? They show this beautiful woman, and they say, well, you wouldn't even know she was 30. And I looked at my husband and I said, what?
Your life is over.
That's right, my life is, wouldn't know she was 30?
Yeah. Okay, Audrey.
I think this is really a problem all of society has, and not just advertising. And advertisers did not start this battle. You see the battle of youth. Other societies, such as more the Eastern cultures, Aging is aging gracefully, and people accept it, and it's a wonderful part of life. In our society, nobody says, hey, I'm glad I'm 40. I'm looking forward to being 50.
You know, in China, my husband and I visited there, and we're starting to see the same kinds of high fashion ads in China that we see here, and it's always, you know, the picture-perfect women. They're even using some Western models in some of their makeup ads, so maybe they're starting to take on our culture.
Perhaps, which is unfortunate, because then we would hope that we would be taking on more of their culture.
But what is our culture? Our culture is made up of advertising as much as it is anything. I mean, the average person is subjected, as they walk through their daily life, somewhere between 50 and 250 commercials a day. You can't go anywhere, including the toilet anymore, without being subjected to an advertisement.
Okay.
So
What
to
kinds of
minimize that
ads do
is
you,
a
wait,
force
hang on,
in the
Martha?
culture.
Martha, what kinds of ads do you get in your toilets in Washington, D.C.?
Well, there are now commercial places where inside the toilet stalls in the women's restrooms, there's an ad that you're looking at when you shut the door.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to have to check it out next time I'm in the nation's capital. Let's go to New York City. Here's Susan calling. Hi, Susan. What do you think of ads depicting women today? Are they offensive?
Well, I find the discussion that you're having particularly interesting because I used to work for an advertising agency in a production department, one of the big five, top five of the world. So, and what I found was that not only are the images depicted of women who, frankly, don't even exist in in the modeling world half the time because they're airbrushed, they're recreated on once they are shot. But most of the decisions made within the agencies themselves as to what kind of imagery is shown and who is going to project the imagery is made by men. It is the majority of advertising executives, especially in creative departments, are men. And I found myself as not being one of those cute, tiny-sized two women, having difficulty even within the agency for getting, and I was a producer, for getting my ideas projected, because even within the construct of the corporate structure, the mentality was, let's keep this young, let's keep it beautiful, let's not worry about whether or not this has anything to do with the people who are going to be using the product.
Right. And Susan, we're seeing some examples, actually, of maybe ads that you worked on. Now, let me ask you this as a consumer.
Yes.
Do you tend to buy products that will portray women more realistically? I mean, I steer clear of those Special K cereal boxes because I can't stand that woman looking in the mirror and she's like a size 1.
Exactly.
I'm thinking, come on.
No, and in fact, one of the ads we did for this is going to sound a little silly, but for a well-known peanut butter. The original ad, the way it was shot, was there was a shot of a woman in a health club with one of those song-type leotards on over black shorts. And the shot was of her bottom going up and down. And they ran the ad that way, talking about how if you eat their lower fat peanut butter, you will be able to look like this. And eventually there was enough pressure put on the product maker that the ad was recut and that was taken out. But it caused me to go and say, look, I'm not going to buy your product because I am so offended that you feel that you need to use sex to sell
Peanut butter, for God's sake. Susan, thank you very much for calling. We got to take this break, but we're going to be back with much more. What do you think of the ads on television today, or maybe some of the print ads that feature women? Do you think they treat us realistically? And you guys are invited to join us too. Call us at our new number, 888-NEWS-TALK. It's toll-free. Give us a call. Tell us what you think. This is News Talk Television. Like that, I don't think he's thinking about her mind. What do you think? We're talking about the ads on TV and in print magazines that portray women Do you think that we're getting a fair shake? Maybe some men like the sexy advertising, but some women are really turned off. That's what we're talking about today. And News Talk Television is the place where your voice counts. So here's our information specialist, Melinda Murphy, to tell you all the ways that you can be in touch throughout the show.
Sorry, I was a little distracted when we first started because here's Psychology Today. Remember we're talking about the Diet Coke man? Here he is, the beefcaking of America.
There he is with his shirt on.
It's a change, but anyway, I'm sorry, I was paying a little attention to that. We'd love to hear from you, though. Now, as Dara mentioned, we have a new phone number. What do you think about the beefcaking of America or about the sexing up of America with women? You can call us 1-800. Oh, wait, 1-888
Got a new
News
number.
Talk. I can't even do it anymore. 1-888 News Talk. It's still toll free. You can also fax us 1-800-450-0019. Send us email at newstalk.com. Visit us in our chat room. Actually, we have a lot going on in our chat room. Sarah says, you are only sexy until you're 30, unless you're a man. Jim also says, in other words, if your age group isn't in a proportionate amount of commercials featuring attractive people, then your life is over. That's that's just some points.
That's what one of our guests was
chat
saying,
room. Yes.
actually. What do you think of sexy ads on TV?
Well, I don't like it.
You don't?
No,
Why not?
because it doesn't give it to the children, the young generation, morality when they go in the street, and that's why we have a lot of rapists, a lot of garbage.
You think it's even bigger than makeup and hair stuff?
Well, that's okay. That the makeup, everybody wants to be different once in a while, so that's.
But you don't like the sexy ads where
It
kids
just
can see
doesn't
it?
like, you know, there is conservative.
And,
There is
if I
such
may-
a limit.
I think one of the issues that we
Yes,
keep
Audrey.
bringing up is that the products that we've been talking about are makeup, perfume, jeans, where sex, in a sense, is related to it, to these types of products and the use of them.
Right.
But when you think about a lot of products, such as the high-tech products, AT&T is a great commercial where a woman is trying to balance a career. She's on the road, she's traveling internationally, and she tucks her daughter in bed through the use of technology. And I think technology types of ads are really on the cutting edge. We're seeing women in more professional roles.
But cosmetic
Some of them are very
cosmetic
sexualized
ads
ads,
set you
too.
up from the age of 12. You are never good enough. You start looking at makeup ads, you start looking at your skin, you start dieting from the age
But
of
in
12.
fairness, you know, Lauren Hutton now is being used in some makeup ads, and I'm really pleased. She's over
Me
50.
too.
All
I
right,
am.
listen,
There
we're going to talk more. Martha, I'm going to get you in here, but we have to take this break, and when we come back, we're going to hear why one man says that women do prefer to see other women in advertisements. We're going to find out why he says that in just a moment. Stay tuned. This is News Talk Television. Just saw a bunch of beer drinkers. We're talking about advertisements, especially if they are degrading to women. You know, a recent study by the firm of Saatchi & Saatchi found that ads do not portray the lives of women accurately. They too often reflect women just as sex objects. Critics argue, though, that Madison Avenue doesn't intentionally offend women. They say that sexy advertising is good for the bottom line. Joining us is Dr. Larry Anderson. He's an advertising consultant, and he is a professor of marketing at Long Island University, CW Post campus. Larry says research has proven that women do like to see other women in ads, and attractive women. Larry, would you explain that? Does the research really show that?
Well, sure. Since 1977, that was when the first research began on that. And what I've been hearing today is a lot of anecdotal ideas. People say, I'm offended by this, I'm offended by that. But what you really need to do is study it for 20 years. And then after 20 years of studying, getting all the research together, what you have to do is say, this is what works.
Well, let's talk about some of the more effective ads. And you know what? Maybe we're being unfair just focusing on the makeup and fashion ads. There are all kinds of products that we see commercials about, and it's not just the fashion stuff. What works? What has been particularly effective using an attractive, maybe even sexy woman in the ad?
Well, I think what Audrey mentioned a moment ago is really the fact that same research has demonstrated over and over that you have to have it for the right kind of product. An attractive woman can't sell a ratchet set very well. Now, on the other hand, what was mentioned earlier also, when you talked about, I believe it was John Madden, he can sell just fine. And Ann Richards, when she was in a Dorito commercial, as an elderly ex-governor of Texas, she also could sell very fine.
Yeah, but Mario Cuomo was there too. It's like they almost had to have a guy to counteract the woman.
Well, I think they both were defeated. So
that's true. They both lost.
But it was a very effective advertisement, and she was in that ad because she's someone. And
she was
John
not
Madden
in the ad because she was a 60-something-year-old woman.
Why was she in the ad,
And I think
Martha?
that's the point.
Okay,
Why was she in the ad?
That's exactly the point of all of this. Is a sexy woman is in an ad because she's a sexy woman. And Martha, is that
Yes,
right? Martha?
Martha in Washington,
And
yes.
Martha, if you do what John Madden does, you'll be advertising for Ace Hardware. I mean, that's all
mean
there
the
is
fact
to
that
it.
he's a football
I don't
star?
see Billie Jean King doing it. I don't see other woman sports heroes doing it. I see John Madden doing it. And, you know, the other thing, you said you don't use sexy women to sell ratchets. Well, if you go in any auto repair shop and look at the calendars for the auto parts, I think you're going to see a lot of sexualized advertising.
Well, that also...
So somebody is not getting the message, and
right,
you're saying
well,
the public isn't getting
yes.
it, but I'm saying advertisers aren't getting
Let's
it.
be sure that we focus on this. Audrey also mentioned this earlier, and it's very important. When you go into a hardware store and it's targeted at a specific audience, men like to see calendars with women on the calendars. That's all there is to it. Those aren't intended to offend anyone, and if they weren't effective, they would disappear.
Okay, but let me ask you this. There are commercials for cars. We know for a fact that women buy just as many cars as men do, maybe even more. Are we still seeing the sexy women draped over the hood of the car, or is that a thing of the past now?
We know we're not, because it is a thing of the past. You can see women, professional women buying cars. The one ad that, in a sense, made fun of men, where the woman goes in there to pick a car. She said, well, I still need men to help me pick out the color. So it's, and women are buying half of the cars.
But what constitutes a sexy woman? Does she have to be under 30 to be a sexy woman?
No, and I think the best example of that maybe is what Maidenform has accomplished over the last few years. You might remember back in the 60s, Maidenform had that woman riding down the Nile in her Maidenform bra.
Oh, dreadful,
and
yeah.
And then later on, she was a corporate woman getting out of an executive helicopter, but you could still see she had that on. The most recent ads, though, have had her as a baby boomer, probably somewhere close to 50, with a sweater on, not showing her Maidenform, and she's at a PTA meeting. Now, that was all written up in advertising age, and I think it's typical of where advertising is headed. The reason is, and that's what Audrey said earlier, you have to do that to appeal to baby boomers. If you don't do that, the ads won't be effective, and it's important that we keep remembering... I'm sorry?
Go, finish your thought, Larry.
It's important that we keep remembering that these advertisers put billions of dollars where their mouths are. Other people can criticize them, and they're putting nothing into it.
Yeah. Martha, let me ask you about this. We were talking about car ads. I see that one spokesperson now for, I think it's Ford, is Susan Lucci. She is a soap opera star, but she is over 40. She is not some young ingenue without a line on her face. I think that the car makers are getting wise, appealing to women who are of a certain age, beyond 30. The car makers know that women are buying cars. I think they are getting more responsible, don't you?
I think car makers are. I mean, I'm not here to condemn all advertising. I think if you look at most print ads for cars now and many television ads, you can't tell who's driving the car. They pretty much concentrate on the car, and the windows are darkened. So, no, I think car makers probably are getting more responsive. But
So who's irresponsible, Martha? Who's still missing the boat as far as you're concerned?
Okay, let's take an ad like the Special K ad, which has been talked about a lot, that women hate the ad, but it's aimed at women. Now, the folks at the cereal maker said, well, the product is selling well, so we're not going to change the ad. What they don't know, and it astounds me that they don't bother to find out, is how much better that cereal might be selling if they were not running an offensive ad.
Okay, let's go to our phones. Here's Jenny calling from Oklahoma. Jenny, hi. What's your question or comment about ads depicting women?
Yes, hi. I'm glad to be here today.
Glad to have you.
And my comment is that I believe that unless and until women and men both are ready to boycott whatever the products, whether it's a car or a jar of peanut butter, and unless and until we're ready to boycott those products and refuse to buy them, I think perhaps things won't change.
Are there any products in particular, Jenny, that you won't buy because you find the commercial either offensive to women or just plain stupid? I remember my mom wouldn't buy Charmin tissue because she hated Mr. Whipple squeezing the tissue.
Yes, yes. Well, I think that the Kellogg's Special K is a perfect example of a product that I would not buy because the woman is unbelievable. She's not... she does not portray who I am or who my friends are, who my female friends are. And I think for the men that I know also, she does not portray the women in their life either.
Only in their dreams, Jenny, only in their dreams.
Perhaps.
Thank you very much for your call.
Thank
What were you trying to say,
making
Audrey?
a very valid point.
And
she
that
won't buy certain products, and that's exactly what we do. We as consumers vote with our dollars, and I think everyone here would agree that if you're offended by an ad, you aren't going to buy it, male or female, and that's what advertisers are seeing across the board. I think women need to stop this whining. Times are changing. Advertisers are taking notes. They're very sensitive to women's needs and women's concerns, and you can see that women are portrayed. I think a lot of these examples that we're bringing up are old ads or old commercials.
Okay, let's get into some of the new ads, but we have to take this commercial break. We still have commercials here. Hopefully they won't offend anybody, but we're talking about ads that you see on TV and print ads and magazines, especially when it comes to portraying women. Are they realistic or do they offend you? Let us know. This is News Talk Television. Welcome back to News Talk Television. We're talking about the ads that you see on television, maybe you see in magazines. Do they really portray people's lives as they are, especially when it comes to women? Let's go to our own woman on the scene here, Melinda Murphy, our information specialist. What do you have?
Well, there was a study recently done by Arizona State University. Now, what they found in this study, they're still looking to see if there is a link between the ultra-thin models in magazines and the number of young women who have bulimia. What they found is that the exposure to these ultra-thin models in magazines can lower self-esteem, and they can make women less satisfied with their own weight. Whether or not it is responsible for the massive increase in the cases of anorexia and bulimia in this country, that was still undetermined, but they said it does have an effect on some women.
Okay, let's go to a guy. Stand up here. What commercials do you like on TV?
I enjoy humor and uniqueness, and like there's a mature woman in an Amoco commercial with a back head, there's dolls in the back window bobbing, and she's listening to a Kool and the Gang, and she's tapping her head. That's unique. It's got mature people in it. It's a realistic outlook on life. That's what I enjoy. And sexiness, yeah, it has a part if there's humor involved, if it's unique, and if it catches my attention. And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thanks so much for your comment. I like the commercial. You know, we were talking about beer ads. I don't like those, you know, those bimbos jumping around, but, you know, as we were saying, maybe the commercials are not aimed at me. But I like the one where the guy is trying to get the last can of beer, and he keeps sidling up to people saying, I love you, man. You like that one? I mean, that's very clever. Yeah, this lady loves it. Well, would that...
Another one.
I'll stand up here.
Another commercial.
What do you like?
The Kmart commercial with Penny Marshall and
I love
Rosie
that.
O'Donnell.
I love
think
that.
that's fantastic.
And
I do too.
I think what you're demonstrating there is that it isn't attractive women only. I think most of us here remember the Where's the Beef commercials, which made a rather...
Yes.
That's right.
What was her name? Clara Powell? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And these are the commercials that you remember and you talk about.
That's right. Very true. Thank you. Yeah. Those are some great examples. I love the Penny Marshall, Rosie O'Donnell commercial because, I mean, let's face it, these are not babes, capital B,
right.
but they're funny, they're smart, and they look like a lot of us.
They look like
John
real
Madden,
people.
he also is in that same mold. And that's why he's there. It's very unfair. And incidentally, about women, if you wanted, I'd be glad to represent Barbara Walters if she wanted to advertise anything, but she refuses to do it, and I guarantee you she would have an audience, and everyone on Madison Avenue would be happy to have her as a...
Right, because she's famous and powerful, and you see her weekly, but what about the rest of us who are looking for older women that are good-looking and sexy? Why don't we see them?
Okay. I detect a note of personal resentment here. You're an actress, aren't you?
Yes. And if there's like one job for a mother over 45.
Yeah.
All right? And all the rest, they want hot, This is what hot, gorgeous young women. And when they advertise them backstage, they have even said, we want elderly people 45 and over.
Ooh.
That's how the younger generation.
Audrey, makes me a little bit nervous. I know. But as a consultant, truly, to some big, big clients, you have the power to tell them what you heard today on this show, that many, many consumers are really angry about it.
That's exactly right, but I think the point is that they know this and they're acting on it, and we have seen the changes already. I think a lot of the arguments that we're bringing up are old arguments, and maybe 10 years ago this was the case. But
That is just not true.
Martha?
That is just not true. You can pick up any magazine, you can go to the bus stop right now in Washington, and you can see a crotch shot of a woman advertising a movie with about 5 men looking through her legs. Now, that's not 10 years old. That's today. That's outside right now.
I saw that one, but that's Hollywood too. I mean, it's not just the ad industry.
It doesn't matter if we're talking about what kind of images shape the culture and influence our kids and what women and men and everyone thinks of themselves. You can't say, well, we're going to exempt that one because it's the movies, or we're going to exempt that one because it's makeup. You take something like Men's Sports, Sports Illustrated magazine. When they run their TV commercials, it's a constant cut between football and sexy women in the swimsuit issue.
Yeah, it's the swimsuit
Now,
issue.
those are today's images. That's not 10 years
Martha,
old.
But that's their biggest seller, let's be honest. That is the biggest selling magazine they put out.
Sex or football, what are they selling?
Martha, they are, I think, targeting an audience, aren't they, Larry?
It's also important to remember that these people are in business. If they don't do a good job, they'll be out of business. We've been mentioning Special K. Most advertisements last between 6 weeks and 2 months at the longest. Special K has been going on, I recall it, for years.
Yeah, me too.
And the reason it's gone on for years is, well, it's gone on because it's effective. If it wasn't effective, they would have to pull it.
How do they know what wouldn't be more effective, though?
Well, what they need, and I would be glad to do this, they need a few $1 million from somebody else who's willing to spend the money to make the other side of the argument. Perhaps somebody saying Special K is very nutritious and take the other approach and leave the woman out of it, see if their sales go up or go down. If they go up, they'll say, gee, you were right. If they go down, you were wrong. But right now, the critics, they want to say that you should change, but they're not willing to pay them for the change.
So Martha, let me ask the question that really Larry posed. Would watchdog organizations be willing to foot the bill to make up the lost sales if there are lost sales? I don't think so.
No, I don't think that, I think that's a red herring. It's a false
Of course,
issue.
it's very easy to be a
Because,
critic.
you know, watchdog organizations such as ours, we feel like advertisers have a responsibility in this country for a social responsibility as well as just the responsibility of that almighty bottom line. And if they're demeaning or degrading half the population, that is a responsibility to society that they're not living up to a reasonable standard.
Of course they have that responsibility. No one would ever suggest that they didn't. The problem with that is that if they do something which is irresponsible, like go out of business, that would not be a very wise approach to take.
We need
so
to take this phone call.
Special
Martha?
K ad, they're out of business. I don't think so.
All right, let's find out what Bob from New York has to say. Bob, get in here real fast. It's a pretty heated discussion.
Good morning.
Hi.
How's everybody?
We're great.
Good. Something I told your screener when I called, and Larry brought it up a minute ago. I'm sitting here. I'm 49 years old. I'm sitting here looking and thinking back to some of the most, the ads that I remember. One of them happened to be the "Where's the Beef" commercial.
Right.
I mean, this lady, if anybody thinks that she was sexy, I mean, she may have been sexy to an octogenarian.
Right.
But she was gorgeous in that commercial.
Yeah.
Very appealing.
Yeah, she was.
I mean, I look at the man that does the Dunkin' Donuts commercial. I mean, if any lady thinks he's sexy, then maybe they ought to look at what they're looking at.
Yeah, Bob, this is one of the most successful actors, by the way, in commercials today. Am I right, Larry? I don't know his name, but we can all picture him. He's got the dark hair and the little mustache.
Sure.
Yeah, time to make the donuts.
Or Dave from Wendy's, too?
Dave
Oh,
from
sure.
Well, but Dave had to have his own company in order to get on TV. You know, Dave Thomas is a real guy. Bob, your last thought?
Well, I'm looking, my favorite commercial, and I have to admit it, is the Taster's Choice commercial. I mean, it's been running like a soap opera. The lady that is in that is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I would love to meet a lady like this.
Hey,
now,
Bob.
if she's under 40 years old, I'll eat my hat.
I'll give you a little trivia. You know the new guy who's in the picture, her ex-husband?
Right.
She's really married to that man in real life.
Oh, she is? That I didn't know.
See,
I
something new.
keep
You learn
waiting for a
something
next installment of that commercial.
Yeah, me
But,
too. I love it.
just as a final thing, I'm 49 years old. I weigh approximately 250 pounds. I look at these commercials for like Soloflex and Adflex. Now, there is no way I'm ever going to look like any of these guys that are in these commercials. But do I have a Soloflex? You better believe it, because I want to be as healthy as I
Thank you
can.
very much for some excellent comments, Audrey.
Bob's comment about Taster's Choice is really true of what we're seeing in advertising now. They're moving from more the sexy orientation and influence to the romantic part of our culture. And that's because our society is becoming more conservative. And it's also that we're afraid of all of the sexual diseases and AIDS. And so as a culture, we're dictating that this is what we want to see. We want to see the romance and the excitement and those types of commercials that capture that adventure.
All right, we need to break here before we get to final thoughts. What do you think about ads on television today or maybe in your magazines? Do they truly portray women realistically, or are they a little bit demeaning? What do you think? This is News Talk Television. Continue with ads from the 50s to the 90s. This is 1996, and this is Kodak. One of your clients, Audrey. Did we really have to show a woman in a bathing suit to show how great the film is? We did.
I am proud to be a marketer, and I am proud to be a consultant to organizations such as Kodak because I believe they are showing the different dimensions of women. And I'm proud to be a woman in the 90s because I think there's a lot of avenues. And by showing an attractive, athletic woman in this particular ad, is I think, more power to
And here's the cover of Sports Illustrated we got. I think it's the women's basketball team, so they're pretty athletic. So maybe we have come a long way, baby. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I ask all of your audience, both here and at home, to pay attention to the advertising and the sponsorships as we start watching the Olympics this week. Because I think the way women are going to be portrayed both on the fields and on the courts, as well as on TV commercials, are going to suggest all the different dynamics and excitement and energy that women really have to offer.
Martha, go ahead.
I'd like to underscore that, and a parting shot, I'd like to actually agree with Audrey. I think that when you see an ad that you like, not only should you vote with your pocketbook both ways, you should let that advertiser know. That's a good ad. I like seeing women portrayed that way. And we will see some strong women in the sports field during the Olympics. But what I'd like to see is that all year long.
Okay, fair enough. Are you any more encouraged today, Ann?
Yes, a little bit. But I just think that women over 40 should be given the opportunity to show that we're sexy and funny and have had to have a sense of humor all these years and are willing to show it in commercials and in magazine, print, or whatever, if given the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, from Rosie O'Donnell to Penny Marshall, from the Where's the Beef Lady, Clara Peller.
Right. You don't lose your sense of humor, and you don't lose your sex appeal just because you're over 40.
Amen to that. Larry.
Well, it's important for us to remember that it's the society, and it works. It works very well. And industry is watching it. Madison Avenue is watching. And anything that anyone doesn't want, it disappears quickly. Everyone knows that happens.
You know, we mentioned the Taster's Choice commercials for the instant coffee, and it features a British heroine, if you will, of the episodes. Are the Europeans more sophisticated when it comes to advertisements, Larry, than, say, we are here?
Those particular ads did actually come from Europe. That's where they originally started.
Right, right.
But I wouldn't say they're more sophisticated. I think most of the good ideas come from right here in New York.
You don't work on Madison Avenue, do you?
Most of the bad ones do.
Martha, you were saying what?
I said most of the bad ideas come right out of there, too.
Hey, listen, you know what? I want to ask our audience something. With your applause, truly, knowing what you know today, having heard this discussion, would you boycott a particular product because the ad offended you? With your applause. That's all? Maybe it's just a good product, and that's why you would use it? Who would not boycott it simply because of an ad? All the men. All the men in the back row, I think. Well, listen, it's been a really, really interesting discussion today, and I guess the bottom line is if you don't like something that you see on TV, you either write a letter or you simply don't buy the product.
Absolutely. My advice to consumers, your dollars are your votes. Go out there and vote.
All right. Well, boy, that's a good theme as we get in this election year. Not only November '96, but every single day that you see a commercial on television or something in a magazine. You've all been so interesting. I thank you so much for coming. Martha in Washington, thank you as well. We'd also like to thank those of you watching us on TCI of North Dakota in Lakota. I'm Dara Wells, and remember, if it's in the news, we're talking about it right here on News Talk Television. Join us again tomorrow, will you? Bye-bye.